In this session, we must understand the basic role of ICT in education sector, where the importance of digital education, the tools of digital education, the benefits of digital education can be understood with this particular session. Right. The overall idea of discussion with this particular session would be, we will understand the basic tools which are being implied upon in the digital education, right? The technological advancements which are being brought on, starting from the storage devices for distance education, or the cloud-based system for distance education. That precisely the technologies we have understood, then the role of it we will understand also, right? Then AR, VR, augmented reality, virtual reality, etc. The social media forums, then we have the digital libraries, then the upgradation of the classrooms, or the smart classrooms and the basic idea of smart classrooms. The overall ICT based management of the education system also, that may be learners management system, etc. They can be understood also, right? So this will include a variety of tools which are being brought into education system or digital education system from ICT. And then we will understand the major initiatives which are being taken up also, right? So precisely this would be the holistic approach that can be taken up towards digital education, right? This year we had the question related to digital education, right? Like, what are the major benefits of digital education? Now, when this particular question has been asked, the technical aspect of it can also be extracted, or the technical aspect of it can also become presumable questions also in upcoming years. So this particular topic would become important for GS paper 3 science and technology portion. Also it is important for GS paper 2 as well, where the policy making or the education is being spoken, or GS paper 1 where education is also being spoken with society, right? Now precisely when we understand the basic idea relative to education and education system on a whole, when we try to understand these things, the overall education system in the country has a variety of problems, and that's why the ICT is so important to be brought into or to be incorporated with education. The major problems that we see with the education system, the first and foremost problem is with the basic structure of the education system. Now that structure involves three major components. First is the syllabus, right? Second is the infrastructure. Third is with the teacher, right? These are the, we'll discuss what all problems are there. The second nature of problems with the education system that we see is with the delivery of education. And the third basic nature of problem that we see with the education system in India is with the reception of education, when it is, that may be at the aspect of the students that we speak, right? The problems that we see with the students also, right? Now one by one, when we try to understand the basic nature of problems that can be identified, syllabus, right? The constancy, uniformity of the syllabus is one of the major problem itself, right? And then what all is to be included and how that particular syllabus or for particular, we can say, that may be technical education, that may be non-technical education, any way around, right? How the education syllabus is directed so that it is more directed towards improvisation of the skill sets, so that employment can be generated. So the continuum of employment and education, when it has to be created, it would always be burdened over the type of syllabus, the type of learning which is being provided, right? The types of certificates which are being given, the type of skill sets which are being generated, right? So different aspects of it become particular problem. The first and foremost problem with the syllabus is with the uniformity. All across India, we do not have uniformity of the syllabus. That may be with primary education, that may be with the postgraduate level education also, or the higher education also. When we try to understand, the syllabus in different states are different. That means the skill sets are different. That also means the some of these states may have more priority towards a nature of the job or the employment which is being generated, and the skill sets would be far more higher. Some states may suffer, or the aspirants or the students in some of these states, they will suffer with some of the lacking, or they will have a lack of, we can say, some types of these skill sets which are desired for employment, right? So precisely when we understand this particular thing, syllabus, the continuity of the syllabus, the type of the syllabus is one of the major problems, and understanding those problems is a tedious task, because coming on to a continuum where the exact idea of employment, skill generation, education would be created, that requires a consensus amongst all those which are involved in education system, right? All these stakeholders involved in the education system. That may not be teacher, that may also be the one which is designing the syllabus, the one which has created the complete nature of the syllabus, and then the students also who would study whether a particular syllabus which is being created would be compatible enough to the nature of the students that we have. All of it has to be understood, right? So that is one major problem that remains with the education system: the type of syllabus, the extent of syllabus. Then the infrastructure. Obviously, the urban and rural infrastructure is one major problem where we have to understand, right? The urban infrastructure though can be far more better, but the rural infrastructure of the primary education and even the higher education is somewhere where there is always a question mark which is being raised, right? The infrastructure is not at par, right? In certain areas, and when we speak about the rural areas itself, not all the rural areas will have the infrastructure for primary and as well as the higher education system also, right? Ultimately, the students in the rural areas, they have to travel down to the urban areas, or they have to go up to certain important education sectors or pockets itself, right? Where the private educational organizations are also being involved. The nature, the management, the administration of such type of the educational institutes are not very well directed towards the overall idea of universal education. Rather, it is more directed towards the economy of the education which is to be created, right? That is also one major problem. So rural and urban education infrastructure, availability, reach of the educational infrastructure up to the students, right? That also creates a partition among students, and majority of the students which are there in the rural areas and there are no higher education institutes in the rural areas, then they have to flank down to the urban areas. Now this creates a partition itself over here, right? Some of them, they would be able to reach up to the urban areas, and some of them, they would not be able to reach up to the urban areas. They will remain over there in rural areas, and they would be satisfied with the type of education or the extent of education which was given to them in the rural areas, and post education they would be employed with the nature, the type of jobs or the employment which is available over there in the rural areas itself, right? So a larger population over here is being divided, or there is a gap which is being created owing to the infrastructure of the education itself, right? That is also one major problem that remains over here, right? The type, quality and the skill sets of the teachers also is one of the major problems. The first and foremost problem is with the availability. Availability of the teachers all across urban, rural pockets. This is very well known fact that the rural population does not have the teachers or ample number of the teachers, right? Where ideally one teacher must be available for every 10 students, right? When we compare urban and rural comparison, then there at least must for the urban, one teacher must be available for every 10 students, and one teacher must be available for every 25 students in the rural, urban and rural if we compare, right? If we look up to the rural population, then the present scenario says that the one teacher for every 45 student is available in some rural pockets in India. That is one of the major problems. That means we do not have the availability of the teachers. That is one major problem. Secondarily, teachers are also not willing to go up to villages and teach. That is also one of the mindset with the teachers also. Secondarily, those which reach up to the rural areas, what are their skill sets? Are they very well equipped? Do they have the complete knowledge? Do they have the complete understanding of what they would be teaching, of what they would be dealing up? Do they have the basic consensus to understand and make a particular student or make a particular aspirant and come up to a particular terms with respect to a particular subject? All of these there remain certain question marks, and there are multiple examples that we have seen relative to that also in newspapers, also in news channels. If you look up to, right, a teacher teaching in the secondary level in the school, right, does not know who is the Prime Minister of the country or who is the President of the country, is something which raises a question mark on the quality of the education which is being given to the teachers, or the quality of training which is being given to the teachers. So the skills, the training of the teachers, the awareness of the teachers, understanding, and then the handling up of the teachers, right? Handling up of the teachers and the skill sets of the teachers to handle students, all of it, that is one of the major problem that remains over here. And overall, the education administration itself comes under a particular scrutiny, where there is a constant continuum is required for monitoring of the educational infrastructure, teachers, syllabus, etc. Sometimes that fails. Right. Now the second major problem also remains with the delivery of education in India. Right. The delivery of education, when we speak of, right, there could be multiple barriers in education. Right. These barriers can be linguistic or language barriers. Hindi, English barrier is one of the biggest barrier that we see in a northern part of the country. A student coming from the rural area may not be so fluent enough with English, comes up to the urban population or comes up into the urban institutes, and then faces difficulties relative to language, and sometimes they get dropped out also because of this language barrier that we have, right? The language barriers are there, the cultural barriers are there, the social barriers are there. Cultural and social barriers become more prominent when we speak about the gender-based education, right? The female gender is not being provided education just because or owing to certain problems where we can see that the educational institute is far away from the rural pocket. So the rural females may not be given education or the opportunities of education owing to the distance, or owing to non-availability, or owing to non-delivery of education in the rural pockets also, that there they also suffer. Certain communities do not prefer to educate their children also, right? They try to bypass education, or they try to go into traditional education systems, right? There are many communities which believe in traditional education system rather than the scientific education that should be given, or the vocational education that should be given, right? That also creates the barriers, right? If the education is made available on the doorsteps, then the chances of increase in delivery can be increased, of course, right? These barriers can be abolished, people can be more aware also. That becomes one of the major problems. Delivery also with the rural population, the remote areas which do not have schools and colleges, there the basic idea related to delivery of education becomes a particular question mark also. That is also one of the major problems. Then the reception, right? The education system currently that we have, or the type of education which is being provided, can provide good grades, which is, it is being said that it can provide good grades but may not develop a particular personality, right? Because what is the set of reception that a particular student get from, number one, awareness, second from knowledge, and number third from education, right? That has to be quantified. There must be quantitative as well as qualitative development of the student that must be taken up, right? And while a particular student receives the nature of the education, its quantitative and qualitative assessment and development both can take place. Now usually in India, or in major education systems that we have currently, the quantitative assessment of the education is being properly done. What do we mean by quantitative assessment over here? We can have degrees, we can have certificates, we can top a particular examination, we can write some good things in examination, but at the same time, the personality development, the skill sets which must be inculcated in personality from the education which is being given, sometimes that lags, right? A very basic question is being raised over the basic mindset, the basic emotional intelligence, even the basic IQ or the basic ethics of living in a particular society is something which can be assessed through the qualitative learning. That is meant by qualitative learning. We may accumulate many degrees, we may accumulate many certificates, but we may not have the desired skill sets for dealing up with the clients, desired skill set for a particular business, desired skill sets for a particular set of employment, right? All of this. So we have degrees, we have quantity, but we may not have quality, and that remains as one of the problem with the reception also. One of the problem with reception also, one of the problem with the delivery also, right? So the qualitative assessment or qualitative education is one of the major question mark that is being raised, right? Apart from this reception, different people, different students, different type of students, they have different IQ sets also, right? When a particular thing is being delivered, some of these students in a particular classroom may be able to receive, some of them may not be able to receive. Sometimes these students, certain students, they receive certain things in non-verbal modes. There must be diagrams, there must be figures that must be represented, there must be illustrative explanation of certain things, which sometimes does not happen. So the reception of a particular content is different for different student, and that also creates a kind of division between the students. And sometimes those which are not able to receive the things the way they are being said, sometimes those which are not able to receive also, they are not able to perceive also the way things are being said, the things are being delivered, they lag also, they fail also, right? That is also one of the major problems, and that's how we see that the reception of the perception which is being created through something which is being delivered remains as one of the major problem also. So there are multiple sets of the problems. I'm trying to discuss it in brief itself, because it is itself a topic of 2 hours, the problems with the education system in the country. But when we look up to the nature of problems, majority of these problems can be easily countered if ICT or information and communication technology tools are being brought into in education, right? When we look up to this, then ICT in education is something which is being taken up as a particular tool which can create remedies for the major problems in the education system, right? And when we look up to the remedies which are being created with the basic problems in the education system, then we can look up to this particular fact that all the 3 nature of the problems that we have discussed, the first and foremost problem with the infrastructure, delivery of the content, etc., with the students, with the teachers, all of these these problems can be improvised. First and foremost, when we look up to the aspects of students with ICT, right? How ICT benefits the students, that we can look up to, then rest of the things can also be understood, right? When information and communication technology tools, computers, internet networks, softwares, programs, applications, all of these, they are being brought into, there are multiple advantages which are being driven. Number 1, it would increase the engagement of the student, right? When the engagement of the student is being increased, obviously there could be multiple modes through which a particular thing can be delivered to a particular student. So different students with different IQ may be able to understand it also, right? The sharper ones and those which are not so sharp, we would not say dumb, but we would say not so sharp, they can have 2 different methods of explaining a particular thing. Those which can understand theoretically, they will understand theoretically. Those which require a graphical representation, the simulations, or we can say computers or the displays, they can be brought into, and they would be helpful in engaging the students in multiple ways. So multiple engagements can be created. That engagement would be in such a way that it will help to improvise the delivery of education itself, right? Apart from this, with ICT tools, we can generate the self-paced learning, which is being created, right? If videos are being played upon, then videos have an advantage that it can be self-paced, right? If something is not being understood, it can be watched again and again and again, and the idea relative to a particular thing can be generated with that. So it can become a self-paced learning also, which then helps in knowledge retention. The problems of classroom can be, sometimes students may not be attentive, sometimes students may not be focused. There could be other problems also. Sometimes students are not feeling well and they are still sitting in the classroom, right? They may not receive certain things. These all problems, there are individualistic problems while receiving the a particular set of education. It has been said also that in a particular classroom, nearly 30 to 35% of the students are those which are not able to understand what is being taught in the classroom, and still they sit in the classroom just for being in the classroom, right? That does not favors the student, right? Knowledge retention is zero in that case, right? But with ICT tools, if a particular student is not in a particular state to understand, it can be left standalone, and then again it can be washed, again it can be accepted, again it can be taken up. That may be through video lectures, that may be through online lectures or recorded lectures, anyway, if we say, right? Or a lucid content is also being created over there. So it would increase the basic idea of knowledge retention. When all these three things are being brought into, it increases collaborative learning. Different stakeholders or different types of teachers, different types of the content can be made, can be collaborated together and can be given at self-pace for knowledge retention with multiple engagement, right? So that would also improvise the overall learning collaboration. That would also increases the that also encourages the students towards learning, or the learning motivation can be increased with the help of ICT tools, right? That also favors the students, right? Then it also helps in qualitative assessment. Of the students, right? Constant qualitative assessment, understanding, because there could be a direct connect between the education delivery and the student itself. Now, there could be a using the ICT method itself, there could be a video conferencing tool which can be created. Student may remain in its comfort and can contact with the teacher. Sometimes a direct dialogue with the teacher is not being seen between student in the classroom itself, right? Through the digital platforms or through the video conferencing tools or through the personal chats which can be created, there could be a dialogue which can be created between the tutor or the trainer or the teacher and the student. Sometimes students are not in a particular state to speak to a particular teacher in the mid of the classroom because of that particular self-confidence that they may not have, right? So over the ICT window, there could be a direct connect between the teacher and the student, where this teacher can be able to understand the basic nature of the problems, and the qualitative assessment of the student can be done, right? The examination paper is the quantitative assessment, rather it is the qualitative assessment which can be done. So skill sets or the personality development can be fostered over here. Personality development of the student, that can be fostered over here, right? Plus ICT, as far as students with special needs, right? Students with which are differentially abled, there could be various tools which can be created for their engagement and learning also. So benefits for differentially abled student. Can also be, or their needs can also be answered. Then the basic language barrier that we have, the linguistic barrier that we have, that can also be bypassed through various transliteration or translation tools which can also be generated over here, and that can also help in improvement of the type of education which is being provided. So it can abolish language barriers, where it can help to improvise the delivery of the content also, right? If a particular content is in English and a particular student belongs to a Hindi belt, right, he may not be able to understand, or there are difficulties in understanding the basic type of the content which is being delivered, right? Many people in the Hindi belt, they do have a problem. Those which are preparing for UPSC, they do have a problem while reading Hindu, and that major problem is not over the assessment or the assimilation of the facts which are being written for a particular issue. But with the type of language which they read, sometimes students do not have that skill set also, right? At least with this, with the translation or such transliteration tools also, the things can be given in their local languages also, right? That happens with the South India belt students also. You may understand a particular thing much better in Telugu or Tamil or in other things rather than straight away English also. That happens with these students. That creates a language barrier also, right? It will help to abolish the language barriers through various modes of translation and transliteration tools. That can also be generated over here, right? Content can also be provided in their local languages, in the Indian languages, right? Availability of content in Indian languages also, right? And then there is a large scale content that may remain available over the ICT based platforms, right? There could be documents, there could be flexible learning which can be generated, or flexible availability of the content over the ICT platforms, right? So there could be availability of content, right? Then there could be discussions which can be hosted easily, right? There could be discussions which can be hosted easily. The problems can be shared easily amongst the group, amongst the education group, with the teacher, with the administration also, and that can also be easily sorted, right? Which would become the basic advantage to the students also, right? Then of course it would create a flexible and far more effective method of, it all becomes a flexible mode of education. According to the needs of the students, the delivery system can be made lucid, right? So the way a particular student wants the education can be delivered in the same way, right? So overall, that would be one aspect where the students can be constantly engaged, right? Many things can also be brought in over here, where content, questionnaires, MCQs, they can all be brought in over here. Constant assessment of the students can also be taken up. Content can be delivered in various ways, flexible ways of delivering the content. Interactive content can also be brought in over here, where engagement can be increased with the students. These all can be the primary benefits that would be given, right? Secondarily, ICT would also be helpful in solving the problems relative to infrastructure. For those areas where the educational infrastructure, if they are not being present, then ICT based education delivery on the doorstep of the student can help in reducing the need for infrastructure in the rural areas. Rather, the education can, or the content can be relayed from the distant point in the urban area to the remotest rural area also. And despite not having the school, they can have at least the constant connect with the education system itself, right? So that would be one aspect of it. The distance education or the online learning or the online classes are become one of the major example of it. That is one of the best example that we see right now also, when in the case of pandemic, when schools were not hosted, the classes were not hosted, but the overall connect from the classroom to the student was there because of the online classes which were created. So it can reduce the limitations of not having a particular infrastructure, right? So it can help in remote learning or remote delivery of content can be made, right? So the infrastructural problems can be bypassed, right? Those students which are not able to reach up to urban areas, at least education would be available to their doorstep, right? So in this way, also the overall cost which is being spent over education would be reduced. The cost of education and cost of attaining the education are two different things, right? The cost of attaining the education is comparatively far more higher, right, than the cost of education itself. The tuition fee would be lesser, but the cost of living in a particular area can be higher, right? If you live in an urban area, you travel from rural area to live in urban area, there would be cost of living, there would be cost of food, there would be cost of rent, there would be cost of clothes, there would be cost of constant maintenance over there, right? And this cost may be ever increasing with inflation coming into, right? So during the complete time of attaining the education, the overall cost of living would be far more higher than the overall cost of education, right? So that becomes a particular problem. So it may also become cost effective in that case, that the cost of all accessory cost can be reduced when education comes out to on the doorstep of the students itself, right? They can attain the education in their areas only, in their home itself, right? Which would be far more cost effective, and that would be beneficial for the parents also, right? So cost effective education, because that also becomes one of the major problem, right? And this would be a solution for the gender based biasness which is being created as far as attaining the education is being considered. The females, they do not attain education, or the chances are not being given to attain education sometimes because of that financial problem that persists in the education, and the parents do not, or there is a particular fear of sending the female child to a standalone or alone to the urban pockets also, right? There could be cost, there could be social reasons also that can also be abolished over here with the help of ICT, right? Then ICT can also help in constant monitoring of administration, where or even remote monitoring of administration can be taken up, where constant assessment of education delivery system can be taken up, and because of that assessment, the improvement in the administration can be increased. So the problems with the students can also be sorted easily, right? With improvement in administration, the connect between schools, or the connect between administration and the teacher and the teachers and the parents can also be increased, where the actual problems relative to a particular student can be easily discussed and can be sorted also, right? So the administration, teacher, parent, student continuum can be created, right? And that will help to solve major problems also, right? Then it can also help in assessment of the teachers, assessment and skill development, and training for the teachers. So constantly the quality of education which is being delivered, that can also be constant, that can also be maintained, right? Courses, curriculum, syllabus can be easily sorted. There could be constant upgradation over the demands, needs, as according to the market. The syllabus can be changed constantly, and it would become flexible delivery of the systems, flexible delivery of education, that can also be created, right? With ICT systems, when students enter into the education system, their security also is a particular concern. Then ICT system, the security, the physical security of the students, because they can be constantly tracked, and this becomes important for the primary education, for the children's in primary education sector itself, right? From class 1 to class 5, their security is more important, right? Where do they travel, where do they remain in the school, what is their constant movement, this all can be tracked, and that has to be tracked so as to maintain the secure environment for the students also, right? So security of the students can also be one aspect of it, right? Then it will also help to create, ICT will help to create a constant collaboration between different institutes, right? Though we have seen that thing as collaborative learning, that may be with the type of functions, collaborative functions for the students which can be given, right? Collaboration of academic collaboration can be easy, right? Then the employment and education continuum can be created, which is also one advantage that can be driven, right? Of course, it helps in electronic distribution and storage of the information, so the information may remain for a long term or long time, right? Or the viability of the education, the time for which the education things or the educational aspects may remain viable, right? That may be longer. So longer viability can also be one aspect of it, right? The overall capacity of providing education, of holding the students and providing the education would also increase, right? So capacity, increase in education delivery capacity. Also it fosters, as we have seen with the students also, the interactive learning tools can be brought in also. Can also be improved over here, right? So overall, when ICT is being brought in, the rough idea with the basic concept of bringing in ICT in education came up with the type of solutions that it can provide, improvisations and solutions that can be provided, and the answers to the problems which are being created, right? The major types of the problems that we have with the education system, they can all be sorted over here. That's why the basic tools of ICT, they have been brought in. The basic idea relative to the ICT can be brought in. So we have seen that the education system do have a particular problem, right? And these nature of the problem with delivery, syllabus, infrastructure, teachers, qualitative education, etc.